Welcome to another episode of Terror Tarot here on RUE MORGUE TV. In this series, we look at the use of tarot cards in horror films. My name is Laura Hokstad. I am your host of Terror Tarot and a tarot card reader. And on today's episode, we are going to be looking at the 1999 horror fantasy film The film is the third installment in the Warlock series. The first two films star a young Julian Sands, who sadly passed away last year. The film series wasn't widely well received when it came out, but it does have a small but dedicated fan base. The series uses a combination of practical and early special effects to create kind of like a campy, fun B-horror feel.
For you are the first to have laid eyes upon the new Messiah.
The first two films are kind of wild. They create this crazy horror fantasy lore surrounding Julian Sands' character as this warlock. But today we are here to talk about the third and final installment in the Warlock series, which arguably managed to kill not only the series itself, but the director's career as well. The film follows Chris, who, after her mother passes away, she learns that she's been adopted. She also learns that she has inherited this house from her birth family. Her and her group of friends travel to this small town to look at the house and try and discover some things about her past and her birth family. But what she doesn't know is that she's actually been sent from the past by her witch mother from the 1600s in order to escape this warlock that was hunting her to, I believe, kill her, then resurrect her to become the bride of Satan to bring forth the Antichrist and Armageddon. So I wasn't kidding when I said this series is a lot.
You won't get this child, Warlock. I swear it.
She's mine. She's been given to me.
Mommy!
I bet you didn't see that one coming. I am getting to the tarot part, I promise. We then are introduced to all of Chris's friends, and what we start to see is kind of a host of eccentric characters that tend to hit a few boxes of maybe some archetypes that might be familiar to us when we think of character tropes in horror films. The first person we meet is Jerry, who is the stoner friend, but he's also the friend who's kind of always been pining for Chris, but she's never really given him the time of day. The next friend that we meet, well, I should say her boyfriend, Michael, who's kind of a bit of an asshole. He likes to scare her. He's always discrediting her. And just, in my opinion, like major red flags all around. Like, not a fan of Michael. The next person we meet is my personal favorite because her name is Robin and she is a tarot card reader and a witch. In my personal opinion, I kind of believe she's kind of coded as gay as well, because if we think about it, we're in the 90s when this film was made. They make comments on her being a vegetarian, that she's a witch, a tarot card reader, she only drinks soy milk, and she seems to be very, very invested in the well-being of her bestie, Chris. So I'm just claiming her as my own, reading her as gay. The final couple that you meet is Scott and Lisa, and really all you need to know about them is that they're really into BDSM. And now in walks Mr. Butterfield, the local historian who was the one who contacted Chris about her inheritance of the property. And he begins to tell her that he has these old letters from like the 1600s, which he believes are from her ancestors.
The funny thing is, it was written to a woman named Chris. Maybe you were named after her.
Wow.
But before he can give her these letters, in walks Philip Covington, played by Brandon Payne, who I guess is supposed to be our stand-in Julian Sands for this movie, because he's rocking the same hair, same outfit as we see Julian Sands in the first two films. Philip kind of corners Mr. Butterfield and is able to convince him to give him these letters, which I guess he needs to destroy because they prove that he's a warlock. The only person who doesn't seem to buy into his bullshit is Robin, my girl. So she decides, after a strange interaction with Philip, that it is tarot time.
Tarot time.
Robin draws multiple cards in what we call a Celtic cross formation. And I'm excited because I don't think we've talked about this tarot spread in any of the previous episodes. So it's a lot to get into, but here we go. The first card that she pulls is the Seven of Cups. And on this card, we see a person standing in front of multiple golden cups. And each one has something different within it. So their idea here is kind of like there's choices in front of us, but we won't know what's going to happen until we pick that cup up and drink it. I always relate this to the idea of like, what's behind door number 1? You know, you won't know till you open it. And I think that kind of sets the tone for this whole reading. On top of that, she draws the Tower card. Now, in the entire deck, this is probably the card I want the least. There aren't any cards in tarot that are necessarily negative, but this card does signify kind of a disaster or an unexpected change, kind of like that idea of like the rug being pulled out from under you. And in this placement, it's considered immediate challenges. So out of all the cards in tarot, this is the one you probably don't want to get in a reading. I like to always say that there aren't necessarily negative cards in tarot. They all just have their own meanings. And what we see on the card is a tower with lightning hitting it. It's on fire. We've got people falling to like jagged rocks below. So it really is just disaster and chaos. So if we're interpreting these cards as foreshadowing to the film, I would say so far, both of them are chosen quite accurately. The card that she draws below that is the Six of Cups, and this placement is considered the unconscious, or what we're not aware of yet. And this card is all about nostalgia and looking back to childhood. So I have to say that knowing that Chris is actually sent from the past to protect herself by her mother, and her bloodline and lineage is what's drawing this warlock to her and her family, I see this card as being very relevant in this place, and it's something that Chris isn't aware of yet, but has always been with her. So 3 for 3 right now for tarot being used correctly. And then the card that we see to the left of this is the Five of Wands. And in this card, we see a battle happening. And in tarot, 5 as a number is usually indicative of a shakeup or I always say it as like the climax to the movie of your life. This is that big battle, that thing that we have to all get over to be able to kind of grow and become who we're meant to be. So this card being in the past, I see that as representing Chris's mom having to fight the warlock and send her daughter into the future. So there's this battle in the past that is influencing the here and now. So again, pretty accurate in terms of how the film goes. The card to the right signifies the future, and what we have here is the Ace of Cups. On this card, we see a hand coming from the universe offering Chris this abundant, overflowing cup. It's full of water, there's rose petals falling from it, a dove is flying out of it. So I see this as representing what her mother's hopes were for her by sending her into the future. In a Celtic cross, we see this cross formation here, but then along the side, there are 4 other cards, each representative of another aspect to the reading. The first one is the Querent. And what we see here is the reversed Two of Cups. Now in tarot, there's not only the regular meaning for all the cards, but if they appear reversed in a reading, they also take on kind of like the shadow meaning of the card. So sometimes what the card might mean upright, it might mean almost the opposite of it, reversed. This position represents the Querent, or the person the reading's about. And in the film, the card that Robin draws is the reversed Two of Wands. And this card represents kind of fear or indecisiveness or not knowing how to move forward. So I kind of see this representative of where Chris is at this point in the film. She's made it very well known that she is very uncomfortable in the house. The house is kind of cleared out. It doesn't have any trace evidence of her past or her family. So I see this card as very representative of where she's at emotionally at this point in the film. The next card we see is representative of the environment. And what we see here is the reversed Hanged Man. This card tends to represent outer forces slowing our progress. And I can't think of a more permanent way to slow someone's progress than to kill them. I definitely see this as the environment that he's creating for Chris and everyone in the household. The next card that we see is the reversed Five of Cups. And this placement kind of represents our hopes and fears. So on this card, we see a person looking at all of these spilt cups, and they're kind of looking at them in a mourning cloak. So they're almost, sad that these cups have spilt over. But the lesson of this card is that if they just turn around, they still have 2 full cups. So there's still some things left to celebrate or to be happy about. The message of this card, though, is kind of that we don't want to dwell on the past, but in order to move forward, Chris almost has to confront it head on, which is what she has to do in her final battle with the Warlock.
You won't escape me this time, Chris. There's no one here to help you now. I'm afraid Mummy's not coming.
The final card that Robin pulls is the Devil card, and this one gets a dramatic zoom in. In previous episodes of Terror Tarot, we've talked about how cards like the Death card and the Devil card are used to kind of incite fear or drama into a scene. I do think that was possibly why they chose this, but in terms of plot, the Warlock is actually trying to bring forth the devil, so they're using it in a very literal way. The Devil card also asks us to examine our shadow selves, examine our inner self. And again, just going back to this idea that Chris really has to confront her bloodline, her lineage, who she is, to be able to defeat the Warlock. So overall, I do find that these cards really do add to a deeper understanding of the film. Now, the film isn't perfect by any means, but in terms of their use of tarot, I do think it was used quite accurately. So that takes us to the end of Warlock III, End of Innocence. Whoever it was, be it the writer or the director or the person who was on set, they chose these cards for a reason, and they do tend to lend themselves to a deeper understanding of the film. I guess I'll say it, that Warlock III gets a pass on their use of tarot. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Terror Tarot on RUE MORGUE TV. Please leave a comment down below if you have a suggestion for an upcoming episode, or you have any thoughts about my interpretation of the cards or the film in general. I'm really interested to hear what you think. And also remember to like and subscribe to RUE MORGUE TV so you don't miss another video. And please join me next time and we'll see what's in the cards.
Baby hair escaped from the pack.
Oh no! When I was a kid, I used to part my bangs like curtains. I was like...
Still works.
Yep.